Earlier today, Tauri announced that Nyck de Vries has been replaced by Daniel Ricciardo for the remainder of the season. A little bit early, I will admit. We all expected this to happen during the summer break. You know, it's a nice time, bit of a transition. But Tauri, or Red Bull rather, have decided to give Ricciardo 2 races before the summer break to sort of get to grips with the car, get up to speed, and obviously there'll be then the remainder of the season. Now, there is issues because, well, in AlphaTauri's statement, it does mention that Daniel is on loan from Red Bull. Now, obviously, we've got to think about the future. AlphaTauri also won't be known as AlphaTauri, and it's actually, I think it's been 10 years since Daniel actually drove for that team. So, you know, it has been a while. I'm sure there's some other people, some other drivers over the years that have driven, returned to their original team after a long spell. I can't quite remember a few off the top of my head. But what will Red Bull thinking of? Why do I think that Nyck de Vries might not be the only driver getting fired? Yes, Sergio Perez. This clearly is a battle between Tsunoda and Ricciardo, and potentially Perez. If Perez gets his act together, then, you know, he can sail over the line in that second seat. However, if Perez continues to have the absolute disaster classes that he is having in qualifying this season, you know, that's 5 qualifiers in a row that he's failed to get into Q3. That is shocking for Red Bull. It's only because Verstappen is absolutely dominating. If Verstappen wasn't dominating, then, you know, if there was a proper fight between, you know, like Ferraris, Mercedes, Aston Martins, McLarens, you know, Red Bull would have probably got rid of Perez by now and replaced him with somebody else. But they're comfortable at the moment. They're not going to change something this season at the main team. So why use AlphaTauri? Already, before the season began, De Vries wasn't loved by Red Bull at all. You know, he's one of the first drivers from that to drive for that team in the years it's been owned by Red Bull. That wasn't originally a Red Bull junior driver as well. And obviously De Vries will now have to, you know, think, is my F1 career over after half a season? You know, it would be a shame if it did, but I don't ultimately see him getting a chance to drive elsewhere. Potentially a Williams, but I think that ship has sailed now that, well, Sargent isn't doing a great job, I will admit, in that Williams, but I think that there's going to be other people for that second Williams seat in the future. So, if Perez doesn't step up, and, you know, he continues to have poor performances, then Red Bull will probably look to get rid of him at the end of the season, especially the fact that if the budget cap does come to implicate them, and, you know, some by miracle that next year's car isn't as dominant as we think it is, and, you know, there's a whole load of people up there, then they could look for a change. Is this a fight between Tsunoda and De Vries for that second seat? I think it is. I think that I'm not entirely sure if Perez, even if he has a good rest of the season, has he done enough? The pressure is on both Tsunoda and Perez, because this is different. First, for Perez, obviously, he's got the most to lose. He is in the Red Bull seat. If he doesn't perform, he's losing his seat, and largely probably maybe in and out of F1. We'll have to wait and see what other seats are open elsewhere. For Tsunoda, it's not the end of the world, but if Perez performs and they decide, they decide, AlphaTauri could decide to keep Ricciardo. I'm going to talk about the second seat shortly. For Ricciardo, he's got nothing to lose. This is a straight back performance to F1. You know, the team, the senior team knows what he's capable of, and he's probably going to continue providing that role. For me, he's the most likely to take over from Perez. I think they'll keep Tsunoda on next year, and I think the second seat, now guaranteed, be filled by Liam Lawson. And you've got to ask yourself, why wasn't it filled last year? Can't quite remember. He was like 3rd or 4th in F2. I can't quite remember. I'm sure somebody's screaming from New Zealand in the comments and know exactly how many points he scored last season. You know, I think he's also leading in Super Formula this season. You know, he deserves a chance in Formula 1. I think Liam has done enough to get that seat in F1. Alongside whoever, be it Tsunoda, be it Ricciardo. You know, there's, you know, if Tsunoda starts without qualifying Ricciardo for the rest of the season, and I'm not saying Ricciardo's going to be up to speed straight away. It will take him a few races to get used to that car. I mean, that car is a dustbin on wheels this season. It is the slowest car on the grid. And they, you know, I mean, they're going back to their heritage, really, because Minardi, of course, who used to be that team, were for many years the slowest car on the grid. In actual fact, the late great Sir Murray Walker used to say when Minardi, like scoring a point was like winning the world championship for them. So obviously they don't so much care these days. Obviously there's been rumours about the team being sold. We definitely know the team's going to get a new name next season when it's going to go back to Toro Rosso, which is everyone's favourite, or whatever other thing that they want to try and sell next. Red Bull Cola Limited. I don't know. Let me know what you would call the new AlphaTauri next season as well in the comments below. But yeah, I was not expecting this before the summer break, I was admit. I was expecting we're going to get an announcement in a couple of weeks' time after the Hungarian Grand Prix. You know, when the summer break, you know, when it's, because they got to shut down for 2 weeks of that 3-ish weeks or 4 weeks that they got off. You know, I was expecting them to have an announcement after that to say Nyck de Vries has gone, Daniel Ricciardo in, which, you know, obviously means that the Netherlands don't get to cheer on 2 Dutch drivers this season, because they'll be an Australian in that seat. But yeah, to be honest, it does give a Daniel those 2 races to get used to the car. Obviously it's a sprint as well, which is extra mileage in that sprint, because obviously you've got the 4 main sessions. This is going to be, as I said, this is going to be a big test for Tsunoda. If he starts outclassing Ricciardo, and I mean at the end of the season, he's when, you know, Ricciardo's up to speed with the car, you know, if he's out qualifying Ricciardo, then, you know, and he's also potentially doing better than Perez, then you could be looking at Tsunoda getting a promotion to Red Bull. Don't be surprised to see that. Obviously, excuse me, Red Bull aren't the only interested party in Tsunoda, because Honda, of course, are also interested. And obviously you've got other drivers to think about for next season, being Iwasa as well. Would he be taking a seat here on the sideline? Would he be going to Super Formula as well? So I say that Liam Lawson should be in that seat. I mean, you never know. It's Red Bull. They might just decide to do something else. Who knows what Red Bull will end up doing? That's what I think will happen. Is that Perez will be fired at the end of the season, and he'll be replaced by either Tsunoda or Ricciardo. If the likelihood is Ricciardo, he's the, you know, is the driver with the biggest pedigree. He's the driver that's likely to provide a constructor's the better option in a constructor's fight should they need it next season. Should, for whatever reason, budget breakages come back to bite them. So yeah, I've rattled on for far too long. Apologies for that. Again, let me know what you think about what's going to happen at Red Bull and Alpha Tauri, or whatever they're going to be called next season, in the comments below. If you are new around here though, then please do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 gaming content and more episodes of Race Week. And until the next video then, I'll see you next time. Take care, enjoy your day, and goodbye.